Where present-day Iraq stands is historically known as the cradle of civilization. It is one of the first regions where such a large number of diverse people settled in a concentrated area of this size. This was made possible because of the fertile land around the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This land, also called Mesopotamia, saw the rise and fall of great ancient empires like Babylonia, Assyria, and the Akkadian Empire. During the rise of Islam, it was ruled by the Sassanid Empire, being finally defeated by the Rashidun Caliphates in 642 AD. In the beginning, Iraq constituted a province in the vast burgeoning empire, but with the rise of the Abbasid Caliphate in the 8th century, it became a center of attention as Caliph Al-Mansur laid the foundations for his imperial capital, Baghdad. This city was to become the center of various rich traditions and cultures for the next 500 years. This era is known to many historians as the Islamic Golden Age, before being eventually sacked by the Mongol ruler Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan. The design of the city was a marvel in urban planning and labeled as one of the greatest construction projects in the entire Islamic world. Al-Mansur realized the location on the bank of the Tigris would provide both a bustling metropolis in peace and a strong citadel in war. Well versed in Euclidean principles of geometry, Al-Mansur closely supervised the construction of the circular perimeter. It was said that the Caliph himself walked on the ground to mark the perfect circle for the outer walls 4 miles in circumference. The outer walls were fortified and ringed by a deep water channel for extra security. 4 gates, equidistant from the center, were built which connected the center via straight roads, providing sentries an opportunity to spot any trouble easily inside or outside the city. A network of waterways called the Sarat Canal, which connected Euphrates with the Tigris, added to the visual value and probably helped the drainage of the city too. The 4 main roads acted as the bazaars for the city, and in the center was the royal precinct with the great mosque and the royal palace with the remarkable 130-foot high emerald dome visible from miles in all directions. As Baghdad was built on the trade route which linked Central Asia with eastern lands, it became a trade hub with markets offering goods not only from all parts of the Muslim world, but from lands as far away from Europe and India and China. Being the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, it gained a central position in the world. This resulted in drawing all kinds of people to the city, and of course resulted in an influx of literature and knowledge. Caliph Harun al-Rashid set up the famous Bayt al-Hikmah, the House of Knowledge, which became a repository of all existing knowledge in the world and Baghdad's great library. Its major achievement was the translation of knowledge from Greek, Syriac, and Persian sources. The house offered an unparalleled study of sciences and humanities. By the 9th century, it boasted one of the largest selection of books in the world. After Harun's death in 809 AD, his son Al-Ma'mun had his brother Al-Amin killed in the resulting power struggle. These internal political squabbles, combined with the gradual erasure of central authority over the provinces, eventually sapped the caliph's power. In the 1200s, Baghdad was also facing the threat of the Mongols from the east since the era of Genghis Khan, whose successors were ruling a great part of Central Asia and China. Hulagu Khan set out to conquer everything in Western Asia up until the Nile in 1254 AD with one of the largest Mongol armies ever assembled. The Caliphate of Baghdad was weakened, but the pride of the Caliph al-Mustasim was such that he replied to Hulagu's threats in these words: "You can come with strategy, troops, and lasso, but how are you going to capture a star?" This false pride and stark difference in priorities is plainly visible from the following anecdote. The ruler of Mosul, Badr al-Din, received 2 envoys from both the Mongols and the Abbasids with a request. The Mongols had asked him for catapults and war equipment, but the Caliph wanted some bands of musicians for Baghdad. In response to this, Badr al-Din allegedly said, "Look at these 2 requests and weep for Islam and its people." On January the 18th, 1258 AD, the Mongol army encircled Baghdad, and so ineffective was the defense of the city that Hulagu's army spent 10 days setting up their siege engines, and in the next 6 days the city walls were already under Mongol control. On February the 10th, The Caliph surrendered to Hulagu in an attempt to save the city and make a deal to continue ruling in some capacity. Hulagu asked him to disarm the Muslim army and march it out of the city. The Caliph complied, but to the horror of the onlookers, the unarmed soldiers were then mercilessly slaughtered by the Mongol army. The Caliph watched helplessly, and after this, the sacking of Baghdad commenced. Anywhere between 2 and 800,000 inhabitants were butchered. The illustrious Grand Library was burned to the ground along with other schools, houses and mosques. So many books were dumped into the Tigris River that it was said that the river ran black with ink for miles. The canal system responsible for the fertile fields around Baghdad was decimated. When visiting the Caliph's palace, Hulagu asked the Caliph why his house was filled with riches which could have been used to prepare better defences. The dejected Al-Mustasim had nothing to say but, "Such was God's will." Hulagu replied, "Then what will happen to you now is also God's will." Hulagu moved his army from the city on the 20th of February because of the stench from decaying bodies. The Caliph met a violent end as Hulagu ordered him to be trampled to death by the horsemen of his army. Baghdad fell in 1258 AD. Today, Baghdad is known as a place where science, astronomy, mathematics and philosophy were once flourishing. The city was a home of a society of scientists and scholars whose legacies achieved great prominence in Europe and would deeply influence many Renaissance thinkers and other great Muslim intellectuals.